May 25th, 1977 saw the release of George Lucas's Star Wars, which quickly became a surprise blockbuster hit. Often regarded as one of the greatest and most influential movies ever made, it helped change the way movies were made and captured the imagination of a generation. Star Wars quickly became a pop culture phenomenon. Over the course of this series, I will be joined by a number of Star Wars fans from across YouTube and the toy collecting community, as we take a look back at their earliest memories of Star Wars and find out what made Star Wars great. Hello Toy Collector fans, Universal Toy Collector here and welcome to the channel. Just to make you aware that this episode has been re-edited, mainly the intro and the opening dialogue. And the reason for that was because it was far too negative. And I feel that there is too much negativity surrounding Star Wars at the moment. This series is called What Made Star Wars Great, and it's called that for a reason. It gives us a chance to take a look back at our earliest memories of Star Wars, explain why we fell in love with it, why it captivated us, and why it stood out head and shoulders above every other franchise. So let's pick this episode up where we start talking positively about Star Wars. My guest this week, none other than the GOAT himself, BOE. The first question for you, BOE, what were your earliest memories of Star Wars?
My earliest memory would have been seeing a clip on something like, I said this on Martin's thing as well, the screen test. They showed us a clip on Luke in the X-Wing orange outfit, and that just connected with, because I loved Space 99 back in those days, and Star Trek as well. And then also I was in the primary school in the playground. One of my friends must have already seen it. This must have been late 70s, early 78, really, because that's when it came out over here, really.
Yeah.
And he was talking about different characters. I didn't know who they were, so it's like Han Solo, and that sounded Chinese to me. I said the same in that other video as well.
Yeah,
I don't want to repeat myself, but you know, so I knew that character name, Han Solo. And I imagine him as a cross between Mr. Spock and a Chinese character. Then the first actual physical merchandise was the Star Wars Weekly Comic, issue number 2. And my mum bought me that. I remember that it's got a really bright yellow cover. It was a black and white comic in those days. And
so
then
when you missed out on, so did you miss out on issue number 1?
Yeah.
Did you ever, I guess once that had gone, there was no chance of ever getting that issue then?
Not as a like 7-year-old, no. I mean, my mum, I was just glad she got me that one. And I mean, that one's worth quite a lot now, the issue 1, the British issue 1. And the issue number 2 also came with a cardboard TIE fighter, which you had to slot a penny in as well. Sad I remember that. But and then my mum said, "Oh, you're going to go see Star Wars on your birthday." So we went in 14th of Feb 1978. And
how was that as an experience for you?
It was brilliant. I mean, it was just like I'm a very visual person. I'm artistic, autistic, and I always loved drawing. I've always loved I always think visually as well, rather than in words and stuff like that. So I always like visual things like World War II planes, equipment, all that sort of stuff. When I was a kid, Space 99, the Eagle, all that sort of stuff. So Star Wars was just 2 hours of visual perfection. The Stormtrooper design, there's nothing wrong with the Stormtrooper design, really. It's just a perfect design, really.
And that's an original one you were saying that you had as a kid, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I'm just going to put you the big screen because that does look in pretty good condition. That is awesome condition, BOE.
It's fair. It's got pretty yellowed, but you know, it's still a
it's not really shown on the camera, but I mean that looks pretty decent. Wow.
So this is actually from my childhood. So these figures are what really were our Star Wars, because you know you couldn't see Star Wars again in those days. All you had were the Topps cards, the comics, and maybe a copy of the novel. So you would eat up anything Star Wars in those days. if you got something in a newspaper, you'd cut it out and keep it.
Yeah.
And then when the toys came out, the toys were integral to my Star Wars experience. They were just, without the toys, I wouldn't be such a Star Wars fan, because you could take your Star Wars that you've seen in the movie and just continue the adventures with these fantastic figures, you know.
So just going back to the movie BOE, when you first got in there, it all went dark in the theater. What was it that struck you first or got you excited first when it started going on? Was it
it's just the music, the visual, the music, the fanfare, all the visuals, everything was perfect visually. You know, they got the Star Destroyer going over.
So when it was basically when the music started, that's what got you gripped.
And when you were young, when you're 8, just turned 8, you know, the first 20 minutes are quite bizarre, because you've just got C-3PO and R2-D2 are the 2 main characters for the first 20 minutes. And when you're young, 20 minutes is a long time. So it's a bit of a bizarre movie that you've got these 2 characters as the sort of main sort of, they're occupying most of the scenes at the start of the film until they meet Luke. And so it's but still it's great, you know. It's just such a outworldly thing. It really does take you to a galaxy far, far away, with just the focus on the 2 droids in the desert bickering, which, you know, and then C-3PO and R2 part ways, both end up in the Sandcrawler, and then meet with Luke, who's about to go on his hero's journey. So the whole film is just a visual perfection. All the designs of the stormtroopers, the, you know, everything. Darth Vader, especially when you're 8 years old or 7 years old, Darth Vader was very menacing to someone that young, you know. It was very sort of intimidating, quite scary, you know. This saber still got the tip just about.
That is so cool. I love it. I love it. Wow.
So, you know, everything about Star Wars A New Hope is, you know, the cantina scene with all the bizarre aliens, you know, Greedo and Han Solo as well. Just cool. Luke, you know, Luke, Han, Leia, those 3, the chemistry between them, you know, just Lucas cast those 3 perfectly. That, you know, they're such
well, I mean, he spent months and months and months, didn't he? You know, auditioning people, trying to get the right blend and making sure that they gel together as, you know, as a unit and stuff like that. And, you know, because you had people like Kurt Russell auditioning. You had even, I think, is it Terry Nunn? And she ended up being the lead singer of Berlin.
Oh, wow.
You know, sung Take My Breath Away. So she even auditioned and stuff. And so, you know, I mean, I you know, harping on to your episode of For the Love of Star Wars, I thought that Empire of Dreams is possibly one of the best documentaries that they've ever done, and I think it does get very much overlooked where the films and stuff like that concerned within Star Wars. But the level of detail that went into making the films, you know, the set designs, the model designs, and how they filmed it and stuff like that, it was just absolutely incredible.
I mean, it's innovative as well. It was everything was, Lucas had to do it all from scratch. And if it wasn't him that did it, he got the best people to do it, like John Dykstra. You know, John Dykstra developed all the motion control cameras, all that sort of stuff. You know,
building that from scratch is insane, isn't it? I mean, you just can't believe that they've actually had to, because of the way they wanted to film it, they had to build their own cameras, because at the time there was nothing out there that would have filmed it as how they wanted it. It's just insane to think about.
And you imagine what computers were like in the 70s compared to, you know, so it's just amazing.
Coming forward a bit to one of the episodes of The Mandalorian, and they've actually filmed the Razor Crest in that sort of same way on an arm and the flyby camera that they did in the original Star Wars, you know. And to go back to that kind of way of filming, so they just could have used CGI, it would have been so much probably easier. But for them to actually honor that way of filming Star Wars, I just thought was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think something about using physical models or often just makes things look real, you
Yeah,
know. And I think Martin himself said the best visual effects scene is Return of the Jedi, the Endor space battle, where you've got
yeah,
so many ships moving around. And that's never
mm,
really been surpassed
no, no.
because that was
But
just such an amazing visual
so,
thing.
so when you left the theater, then after Star Wars ended, you know, and the credits come up at the end of the throne room scene and stuff like that, how was you feeling? What were your thoughts after actually seeing it for the first time?
It's just more. I mean, I just loved it. It just connected totally, and I must have told my mama I love Star Wars, and it's my favorite thing because she knew me and my sister wanted the toys
Yeah,
ASAP and all that sort of stuff. And when the toys were available, maybe 2-3 months later, she said, "Oh, we can go to our local toy shop in Portobello Road, Barnett's Toy
wow,
Shop, and
yeah, yeah,
you can have one figure each." And the thing was, I was expecting them to be Mego sized,
yeah,
but they were this size. So
yeah,
I was quite surprised by how small they were. But obviously, I chose Han Solo
yeah.
on the Palatoy card for 99p, and that was the first figure I ever got. So
Because
I got,
you have got quite a love for the Star Wars figures, haven't you? The action figures, and you've got quite an
yeah,
extensive collection with all the different
yep,
card backs and like the foreign card backs and stuff like that.
yep.
So when was it that you got really into collecting the figures, and was it back as a kid, or did you?
I mean, obviously, I had a lot as much of the toys as I could when I was a kid, from
Mm,
about age 8 till 13, 14. I think I got my last bits on my 14th birthday and didn't really play with them then. I was getting more
yeah,
into Commodore 64 then.
yeah,
Uh, I wish I hadn't. I wish I just kept on buying the stuff. Um, but yeah, so I played with them up to 13.
yeah,
And you, I know when you talk about you go to your mates and play with your
yeah,
toys. I'd play by myself most of the time and just have get the figures out, make a
mm,
Rebel base with the Millennium Falcon, Rebel transport, Snow Speeder, X-wing, and then the Rebel figures on the carpet in the corner. Set them all up, make the base, and you know do that
yeah,
often on the weekend, on the
yeah.
Saturday, and then
I mean, with your setups and stuff like that, I remember, especially when I was at home and I was playing, if it was getting late, I would never sort of like pack my toys away fully. I'd leave stuff out as it was, and then I'd come back to it the following morning or the following day and carry on playing with it. Did you do that, or did you put all your toys away after you'd finished with them at the end of the
I'd
day?
put them away. I put them away. But I mean, I mean, I think with a lot of it, the fun was setting them up and taking them out from under
Yeah.
your bed, and then taking them upstairs in those days, and then
Mm.
setting them up and playing with them, and then or especially
Certainly
if
a
you've
lot
got
of
a new.
imagination was used in those days, weren't there?
Oh, totally, totally. It was you know, using other toys to like I had bits of Scare Electric. The cars had burnt out by then, so I just used
Yeah.
the track to make a base or something like that. I
Yeah.
had the other toy lines that you could incorporate into your Star Wars stuff as
Mm.
well, and build little things as well. So
So after 1977, Star Wars is released. It becomes a massive, massive hit around the world, and the toy lines are doing really well. Then you get wind or news that there's going to be a sequel, Empire Strikes Back. How
yeah,
did you feel about that?
excited. I'd have to say I was more excited for the toys than the actual movie.
Okay.
So um I didn't see Empire in 1980. That's shocking, I know, but I
You
know
didn't?
no.
Oh.
Um So I probably saw it with Star Wars in a double bill in 81 or 82. But
Okay.
I knew the story verbatim anyhow because I had the comics, I had read the
Yeah.
book and all that sort of stuff, and I had all the Empire Strikes Back figures, so
Mm.
I knew everything that was going to happen in the story. I
But
don't
seeing
know.
it visually for the first time, seeing it on film for the first time, I mean, was you expecting it to be not as good as Star Wars, or how did you go? How did you feel going into it? Because you hadn't actually physically seen it; you'd seen it in comics and the toys, but actually seeing it on screen.
So it must have been 81, late 81 or 82. It was okay. I mean, of the three, I'd say Empire impacted me the least. I think Jedi, by the time Jedi came along, I was the most excited because I wanted to see whether I couldn't believe that Vader was going to be Luke's father. I wanted to see
Yeah.
whether that was true or not and all that sort of stuff. And 13 then was, was when Jedi came out. That was going to be probably the last year or so. I was going to start to grow out of playing with toys a bit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but
Yeah.
I did want to see how the film concluded, and Revenge, as it was called then, that turned out to be Return. But I mean, I was continuously collecting the figures. They were my favorite toy. Obviously, other toy lines like Airfix, little figure soldiers, model kits now and again, other Mego Black Hole, whatever was cheap at the store that you could pick up for cheap, or what my mum decided she'd buy for me and stuff like that. And then I guess video games are becoming more and more of a thing as well in the early 80s, Atari and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
So when Return of the Jedi came and went, and things started to slow down as far as Star Wars was concerned, did you ever feel that there was ever going to be an episode 1, 2, and 3? How did you feel that there was no Star Wars figures that you could actually go to the stores and get? Because I think after 1984, it was pretty much, they'd sort of died out, hadn't they? The figures, it would slowed right down.
Yeah, I mean, because by the 84, I'd have been year 9 at school. So I about to start doing the exams, really. O levels, start doing them. But it's and I guess you just can't play with them anymore because you're 13, 14 by then. So you just want to. I mean, I do wish I still collected them and kept them carded or something like that. But it's I was just excited to see Return of the Jedi. That's the film I've seen the most in the cinema. I saw that 10 times in 83.
So what was it about Jedi then that stood out for you? And I mean, I know you said, I've heard you say that Star Wars was your favorite film because that was what kicked it all off, wasn't it? Empire Strikes Back, it didn't hit home as much as the other two. But what was it about Return of the Jedi that made you go back to watch it so many times?
Oh, I loved, because I was older then. I could go to the cinema by myself.
Okay, yeah.
And so, and in those days you could sit through 2 viewings. They didn't care if you stayed and watched it again.
Oh wow.
So I'd go watch it once and then watch it again.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember, back in the 70s, it was always 2 movies you'd go watch.
Okay.
So to see just Star Wars by itself was unusual, because before that you'd get 2 movies. It's like a double bill.
Yeah.
I think once Star Wars came, that it sort of did away with the double bills. Sort of, it's more seeing 1 movie rather than seeing 2, which was the norm in the mid to early 70s. So I just think, because I've got the novel of Jedi and read that in the weekend, because I was just desperate to know what happened, and I had to know about Vader and Luke. That was I needed to see whether that was real or not, whether Vader was telling the truth or was trying to seduce Luke with a lie and stuff like that. And I was desperate to know, but it's just the whole how it ends. Obviously, it's very on a happy end. No one dies. They destroy the second the Death Star. They get rid of the Emperor. It's all that sort of stuff. And Luke redeems his father. That's such a key point to me. And so, there's just so many good things. I remember seeing, the trailer. There was a show on BBC Two or ITV. It was with Jonathan King, Entertainment USA, and they showed the trailer for
Yeah,
Return of
I
the
remember
Jedi,
that.
and I
Yeah.
was so excited to see the trailer for Return of the Jedi, and
So
I
after
just
Empire, you were left
yeah
waiting, and you wanted to know whether Vader was telling the truth.
yeah.
Before you'd seen Jedi, before you knew anything about it, what was you expecting to happen? What did you want to happen? Did you want it to be true? Did you want it to be him trying to seduce Luke? So, and what were your feelings when it
I think in the
actually
back of
panned
my
out that he
mind,
was? Yeah,
in the back of my mind, I felt he was lying. I just couldn't
yeah,
see that, but
yeah.
in when I read the book, it turns out that it was true that he was Anakin Skywalker,
What
and
was your reaction to that?
well, it's verbatim, it's written, so you accept it, and
Yeah,
it's just in the mind of a 13-year-old or 12-year-old, because I was now and again thinking about that, it's whether Vader was telling the truth or not, because he is an evil character.
yeah,
But then when you're 20 or 30 and you look at Empire Strikes Back, and as soon as Vader realizes that Luke's his son, he becomes obsessed with Skywalker, and
yeah.
perhaps turning him to the dark side so that those two together, father and son, can overthrow the Emperor.
Mm.
So,
Do you know? I've just had a thought. I've just had a thought. So, in The Empire Strikes Back, right? You the great reveal of "I am your father." Oh, I guess yeah. I suppose when Star Wars had come out, you didn't realize that Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker, did you? I
no.
suppose. No. Okay. I've just scrap what I'm going to say there, because I was going to say they said it at the very beginning. The son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi, because they've put that into the mix, haven't they? Now, with when Vader goes in to the to meet the Emperor
Yeah.
in Empire Strikes Back, the son of Anakin Skywalker, can't become a Jedi or whatever and stuff like that. So that's kind of a bit of a giveaway, really, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah. I mean, also, like, in A New Hope, Obi-Wan Luke says to Obi-Wan, "How did my father die?" And he said, "Oh, he was a pupil of mine. He was betrayed by a pupil of mine, Darth Vader."
Yeah.
So that sort of, in my mind, meant that Vader couldn't be
Oh yeah, yeah,
Luke's father
yeah, yeah.
until in Jedi, Obi-Wan,
Mm,
when Yoda says there is another Skywalker and all that sort of stuff, and then
mm,
Obi-Wan says, from a certain point of view, what I told
yeah,
you is true. It's
yeah,
that's how Lucas explains it all.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, true,
Yeah.
true. So after you've seen the three films, obviously then we had the prequels. I mean, you said they weren't as well written.
No, I mean, I think they're just too ambitious, because if you look at A New Hope, Empire, and Jedi, it's a more narrow focus. It's more action and more swashbuckling adventure,
Yeah,
whereas especially Episode 1 is a lot of senatorial debates and trade federation this and taxation, and it's sort of
yeah,
um perhaps reflects what Lucas was facing with the business of running the Lucasfilm, all that sort of stuff, and
yeah.
fear of paying more taxes, and maybe being at home watching political debates in America, at the
Mm,
time, and that sort of thing. Whereas the original trilogy is a more narrow, tight focus.
mm,
It doesn't need the wider context of what's going on, which I think with the prequels is more about the wider context,
yeah,
and so there's less focus on the 3 or 4 characters that you need to follow it really closely. Whereas
yeah,
with the original trilogy, it's mainly about Luke, Chewie, Han,
yeah,
a bunch of heroes, and Vader, Tarkin, and it's a much more tight and more exciting,
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, I mean, you had the story from episode 4 to 5 and 6, which I thought was just absolutely incredible. The story
Yeah.
was there. I just loved it. Then you come around to the prequels, and at the time they probably weren't as well received as what they are now, but there was still a story there. There was still a foundation that you could
Yeah.
build upon,
I
and
mean,
stuff like
episode
that.
1 leads into episode 2, into
Yeah,
episode 3. So there's a continuity which is
yeah,
missing in the sequels, whereas sequels is there's no part. Episode 7 leads into smoothly into episode 8, and then episode 9 is sort of a fix it job or patch work to
yeah,
try and fix the damage done by
yeah,
episode 8.
yeah.
To what it's just
What? Why is it then? I mean, look, another, for me, Star Wars is what made Star Wars great for me is the fact that you had George Lucas, and look, I know people saying, well, you can't just think George Lucas is, all about, just it's not just George Lucas that did Star Wars. It is. It is. I mean, if it wasn't for George Lucas, we wouldn't have Star Wars in the first place. He wrote, directed, Star Wars. He wrote episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. He wrote episode 6, and then he did it all again for his episodes 1, 2, and 3. So technically, it's George Lucas's Star Wars, isn't it?
yeah.
He had the foresight to build this galaxy, to build this world that we're all, wanting to be in and love so much. He come up with the characters. He come up with the lore, and he did that all the way through from, for me, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There was a story there. And he had that planned years in advance before he started actually filming. Why do you feel then that they couldn't do that with episodes 8, 9, and 7, 8, and 9?
Because, well, with the first 6 movies, it was Lucas at the helm. With the last 3, it was, what they should have done is plan out the whole 3 movies.
Yeah.
And I understand that Lucas had a lot of ideas for what
Yeah.
these 3 movies should be, and Disney just said no, we're going to do our own thing. And I don't know if they were in a rush to get episode 7 out, but they must have just got episode 7 out by itself without thinking about what's episode 8 and 9 going to be. And then they got a different director for episode 8, and he sort of threw his spanner into the works and sort of, and then got back what's his name for 9, and he tried to patch it up, and
So, but I can't believe a company. I mean, yes, okay, Lucasfilm is now under Disney, but why Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy has turned around and thought it'd be a good idea to get. I mean, look, okay, yeah, you had different directors for episodes 4, 5, and 6. I mean, George Lucas, bless him, he couldn't cope with directing another movie at that time because the time, the effort, the hard work that you put into episode 4, it exhausted him and it made him ill. So he thought, he's not going to do that again. So you got Irvin Kershner in, who I thought was absolutely fantastic, and I thought he did a great job with Empire Strikes Back. And then
Kershner was a great director because he brought into it more character development. He let Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill develop their characters a bit more and gave them a bit more latitude in what they could do. Whereas, they often take the mick out of Lucas's directing style by saying faster, more intense. Whereas I think Kershner was more old school and had taught Lucas probably at the USC as well. So, Lucas was savvy when he made that choice of Kershner, and definitely. And the thing is, even though Kershner was directing, Lucas was always overseeing what was going on and probably still doing second unit directing and making sure everything followed and flowed through and was meeting what he wanted. And obviously Lucas always says you can direct when you're editing as well, because Lucas was always into editing as well. And you know, you can always shape your movie when you edit as well. Same with Jedi as well. He would always be overseeing Marquand when he was directing, and often was there, you know, and that probably made Richard Marquand quite uncomfortable that Lucas was there, you know, because who's really the director? You know,
well,
if Lucas is there,
there is that.
that's the thing. It's like,
so I know Star Wars Empire and Jedi, they had different directors, where you had the prequel trilogy, it was all George Lucas and Rick McCallum. So, you know, they had the story there though. So they had the stories for episodes 1, 2, and 3. They had the episodes, but you know, stories for 4, 5, and 6. So, okay, fair enough. Maybe it's wrong of me to say, well, they shouldn't have had different directors for episodes 7, 8, and 9. Okay, because again, I'm just, you know, not really making a point here, because you've got different directors for 4, 5, and 6. But the story, I don't feel the story was there, was it?
no.
You know, and I think that was totally lacking, and that kind of showed, which is a shame.
It totally shows, because episode 8 is a different beast to the other 2 movies. In a way, it's quite an inventive movie. It's quite stylistic. It's quite, you know, if you just watch that by itself, it's got quite, you know, some interesting things, you know, the relationship between Kylo and Rey and all that sort of stuff, you know.
So they weren't very well received, but the thing is, you had a film then like Rogue One come out, and that was absolutely incredible. It just fitted in very nicely, you know, just before A New Hope. And I thought Gareth Edwards, I called him Dave Edwards last week. Dave Edwards was a footballer, so I don't know why I was thinking of Dave Edwards, but Gareth Edwards, I thought he did a great job. I thought he did an absolutely fantastic job with that movie.
Yeah. It was, I mean, it's pretty gritty Star Wars, you know. They attack the base on Scarif, you know. There's some new troop designs, you know. You got the commandos that go on the mission. You got, you know, new characters. You got Andor. You got what's her name, Jyn Erso, Saw Gerrera. You know, I think it is a good movie. Actually, it is. It's quite a
it's not a bad movie, and what I like about it is the fact that they've kept it within Star Wars canon and Star Wars lore. You know, they've not just gone off on a tangent and done something totally different, because I don't think that would have fitted. You know, if they'd have gone off and done something completely different and then tried to tie it in with A New Hope, I don't think that would have worked. So I take my hat off to them for that. And series like The Mandalorian, you know, seasons 1 and 2, I thought were brilliant. You know, you've got Andor itself. Again, it's a totally different type of Star Wars, but it fits in with Star Wars because it's, you know, like a season or a film of Rogue One, isn't it, with Andor and stuff like that? So it's just before Rogue One, so that fits in quite nicely.
Yeah. I mean, even I quite liked. It's not brilliant, but Solo's quite okay. I think it got a lot of flack because it came after The Last Jedi.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think that film really stood a chance. I mean, after what happened with The Last Jedi, and how that was received, I just felt Solo had absolutely no hope. And do you know what? I would have loved to have seen a follow-up to that. I really would have done, because it would have been great to see, you know, Darth Maul controlling the all the cartels and stuff like that. That would have been absolutely incredible. That would have been great to see that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that wasn't to be.
No, I mean, that was quite a decent movie.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so if we go back to the 80s and my story then about collecting Star Wars, it was around from 84 to 92, 93, it was a Star Wars sort of disappeared from the scene. So there wasn't much Star Wars, but the only things was a couple of games on the Commodore 64 or Spectrum, you know, and then maybe a few you'd find the odd magazine you could get Then 91, 92, the comic Dark Empire came out, and
Yeah.
the book, the Thrawn trilogy. The comic was it comic Dark Empire, or the book? Book was
I think the comics was Dark Empire because it was
Heir to Empire, yeah. Dark
oh,
comic was
yeah.
So those came out, and so my mate was into comics. So he said, "Oh, they've got a new Star Wars comic. You should get it." So I started with issue 2, and then got up to issue 6, and then got back. Started going to comic conventions, stuff like that, to get issue 1. Read the Thrawn trilogy, really enjoyed that, and sort of got 92. I was in Forbidden Planet. I hadn't really been to Forbidden Planet before often, but they still had vintage Star Wars figures, carded ones, and you could, like the A-wing pilot on a tri-logo card. That's the Lando on a tri-logo card. A-wing pilot for £15. I wish I'd bought it back then.
Wow.
And they had a 12-back Princess Leia on a Kenner card for 180 quid, and I couldn't believe how much that was. I was like shocked. 180 quid for a vintage Star Wars figure from, so that's 92 for, 10, 12, 14 years ago.
Wow.
So but something connected me with that carded 12-back figure, and I wanted it, and so I was around Portobello. I was still living nearby there, and there's a comic shop there. They had a couple of cheap tri-logos and a beat up Bib Fortuna, and it was like £3 each, carded. So I said, I didn't even have any money. I said to my mate, give me some money, and I bought, because I wanted the figures on card, and bought them and kept them. I still had my figures from childhood as well, and my mum never threw them away. I'd be so upset if she had, so I kept the figures and vehicles as well. And so I always liked, probably when I was about 15, 16, and I was bored, I'd pull out what was underneath and have a look at them, just for the sake of memory, and connecting with the past. And so started going to comic conventions, and there was quite a lot in London in those days. They're all gone now because of eBay and stuff like that, but in those days there was a lot, and you'd get people just pouring sacks of carded figures onto the desk for 7-8 quid each, so you just pick up the ones you wanted, and that's how I started collecting. 93, 94. So by 94 I had a full set of carded figures apart from Yak Face.
Oh wow.
So
do you still have those?
Yeah.
That is insane. Wow.
And a lot of them, like you say, I got a lot of the foreign cards. I was always intrigued by them, because all I remember was the Palatoy cards and the Kenner cards. Really, that's all we had here. Tri-logos. I mean, tri-logos were after my time, so it was all the Palatoys and Kenner cards. And then, seeing a French card or a Spanish card or a Italian cards, my eyes would just pop out my head under. And in those days they weren't so prized as they are now, so you'd pay more or less to maybe for 20, 30 quid for a Meccano Yoda.
Wow.
So crazy prices.
That's mad. Where do you keep them? Where do you keep them? Have you got them in cases, or are they just boxed up?
Most are in a secret location. Some are here, like there's one here.
Yeah. But that, I mean, that is just, let me large you up there. That is a really good looking card back. That is pretty decent. Is that unpunched?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness me. Wow.
This one I bought. I've still got the receipt for this one. I bought this as a birthday present for myself. I bought this 2013.
Wow.
Guess how much this was in 2013?
2013, I'll say 40, 50 quid.
Yeah, 40.
Really?
Yeah.
That is immaculate. That card back is absolutely fantastic. So do you have so with the original figures then, do you have that on the Empire Strikes Back card? Do you have him on the Empire Strikes Back card? Or just
Yes.
you do as well?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
God.
mean, obviously by 94 I'd had most of the at least one example of everyone carded, but then
Yeah.
2009 I got started collecting again. I mean, before, in between that, I was collecting a lot of the modern stuff, especially
Yeah.
with the started with the sort of these bendies there.
Yeah. Oh, the bendies. Yeah, yeah.
So these
Wow.
came out in 93. Yeah, 93. So these were the first, because we
Yeah.
hadn't had Star, everyone bought them,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
they're terrible
Wow.
figures. And then
Wow.
Power of the Force, when that came out,
Yeah.
everyone was just thinking, oh, we're going to make tons of money buying all these figures and stashing them away.
Yeah.
So Power of the Force, then Micro Machines as well, books, CDs, soundtracks, anything Star Wars, I'd collect it. The radio dramas, the books, all the books that were coming out at the time, all the
Yeah.
comics. I used to collect all the Dark Horse comics.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't just the films that you were really into then, it was the actual merchandise as well.
yeah, I'd say more the merchandise
Yeah.
now. It's just
So
totally.
would you say then, because the next question was going to be, what is it about Star Wars that really stood out for you? And I'm guessing from you, it would be the merchandise, the figures, the toys and stuff.
The toys, definitely. The
Yeah.
carded figures, because it's just something about if you hold a carded vintage Star Wars figure, it's just the perfect design. It's got a large image from your favorite movie. It's got the figure, and it's unopened. It's that sort of, this is, it's a
Yeah.
moment in time when you were 10 and you went into your local toy store and you could choose one figure. You had about £1.29 on you, and
Yeah.
you'd go through all the different figures and choose the one you wanted. You must have done the same.
Yeah. 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 I
like
did. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you could spend an hour at the toy shop just deciding which one you're going to buy, choose
Yeah.
one, go home, and then wish you'd bought another one,
But
or
back then you had so much choice anyway, didn't you? So it didn't matter if you didn't get it that time. You could always go back and you guaranteed that
yeah,
there was
the
enough,
back of
you're
the
going to get them
cards,
next week. Yeah. Look at that.
all those
Wow.
to choose from. It's just like, and you see so many cards, they all got the little ticks on them because people would tick
Yeah.
which one. I
Yeah.
did that myself in my,
Yeah.
card backs. It's just that escapism, that
Yeah.
the playing with the toys when you're 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
You take the toys and you just run wild with your imagination. It's just amazing how these little bits of plastic with limited articulation can just really take you into a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. Yeah. And it did because, you say you use imagination, that we never had the play sets that we do today. And it was just like using a table as a landing platform, or,
Yeah,
the bridge of a Star Destroyer or a Rebel cruiser. Do you know what I mean? It didn't
yeah,
matter. You could build bases and stuff like that with just all bits of different kind of furniture. You wouldn't need a big play set. And here's your Boba Fett. Look at this. Wow.
two for the price of one.
That is, yeah. What a great figure he was, wasn't he?
He
Really
was.
was. Great character as well.
Yeah. I think he was
Shrouded
a
in
mail
mystery.
away as well in the UK as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. So we're coming up to the hour, and I've got just a few more questions for you.
Okay.
How important is story to you within the Star Wars universe?
I think it's very important because the story is what gets you hooked into watching the show. Really, it's
Yeah.
crucial. It's
Yeah.
without a story, there's no. It's just a bunch of images that might
Mm.
hold your interest or might not. So story is fundamental.
Yeah. And how long was it when you started watching Star Wars? Because myself, it wasn't really to do with the story. It was to do with the visuals, to see the spaceships, to see the lightsabers, to see the
Yeah.
characters and stuff like that. I didn't really sort of like focus too much on the story. When did you start focusing on the story of Star Wars when you watched the original trilogy?
Probably when I got copies on VHS around 86, so I could then watch them repeatedly.
Yeah.
And obviously I knew that there's obviously reading the comics again and again, especially those that relate to Jedi Empire and
Yeah.
Star Wars. So you know the story verbatim anyhow. It's just
Yeah.
you know when you watch it over and over again on VHS, you can just see all the different techniques that, like, there's certain editing techniques, like when R5D4 blows his gasket or whatever back,
Motivator. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
You see that R2D2 is in C3PO points to R2D2, but
Yeah.
R5D4 is next to him as well, whereas it
Yeah.
should be with the Jawas, and
Yeah.
it's not that. So you sort of become more accustomed to watching the movie and seeing all the sort of errors in the editing errors and stuff like
Oh,
that.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Like when the stormtrooper bumps his head,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. So you become very aware of how all the visual dancing in Star Wars in a way, and then
Yeah.
you because you watch it so many times, you learn it, know it word to learn it more or less word for word, and
Yeah.
you quote it constantly, if and it just becomes ingrained in your mind. So if I watch Star Wars now, it's like sometimes I just drift off because I know it so well. It's hard to,
Yeah.
because I know what's going to happen. It's all that sort of stuff. It's just that
Mm.
sort of so it becomes ingrained. But also you start, like I said in Adam's thing as well, that because you're interested in Star Wars, you pick up books about the making of Star Wars, and
Yeah.
you read about Lucas, all the things he went through, his background, his sort of strict father, his Methodist upbringing, the shop, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What prompted him to go to, because he was a bit slack at school until he had the car crash, and then he decided
Yeah.
he better fix up and do something with his life, and decided
Yeah.
that he would like to go to film school.
Wow. 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 How important do you think the older generation of Star Wars fans are to the Star Wars franchise?
um I guess we're seen as, I'd say we're very important, because it's well known that it's us oldies that buy all the toys now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you don't really see kids getting excited about the latest Star Wars figure that's coming out, like the new Princess Leia on the Vintage Collection card.
Yeah.
But someone like me that sees that card and goes, "Oh, that takes me back to 1978."
Yeah.
I'm so we are. It's very important. They might not want to admit it that we are important. Like Hasbro. I think they've realised that it is adults that buy all their stuff now, or the
Yeah.
adult collector, and
Yeah.
you know, I mean, they've tried to bring out a lot of lines of toys that are very kid friendly, like the
Yeah.
Epic Force or Hero
Yeah.
Nationals, all that sort of stuff. But most of the time, those sort of figures don't do really very well. Whereas if they do something that's aimed at us oldies,
Yeah.
the vintage collection, we're over 300 figures into the vintage collection. That's
Oh
just
no, that's
amazing when you
mad,
think
isn't it?
about that.
That is mad to think.
Um,
'Cause yeah, especially when there's only 96 for the original Kenner figures.
yeah. And then the Black
Wow.
Series as well, the
Yeah.
6-inch figures. they're very. I like the Black Series because with your hands as an adult hands now, when your hands are small, these are much nicer to handle. But when your hands
Yeah,
are huge, you want something a
yeah,
bit more bigger to play with.
yeah, yeah. And also as well, I think as well, I think it's important that with as far as movies are concerned or TV series are concerned, you don't want to alienate the older generation of fans because we are the majority of fans for the franchise, regardless of whether they want to admit it or not. We are. It's as simple as that.
We are.
And I feel that if you try and just pinpoint one demographic or a certain, a group of people and alienate the rest, Star Wars is going to fail because that small demographic of people isn't going to be big enough to sustain and get the numbers, the viewing numbers and stuff like that, which we've carried over the last 40 odd years since
Yeah.
Star Wars has been out, and I just hope they really do think about what's happened in these last few months as regards to certain projects and stuff like that, and just think, come on, with these guys have stood by us for 40 odd years. These fans are important. Let's not alienate these fans because, like I say, without us, we wouldn't have anything like this as far as Star Wars is concerned. And I don't think it would have made it as far as it has if it hadn't been for the older generation of fans.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the collecting game since '92. It's a long, long time.
Yeah,
and collecting all the modern stuff
mm.
and old stuff as well.
Yeah. Because it's not just the studios that are going to lose out if they lose the fandom. It's also companies like Hasbro and all these other companies that do different variations of Star Wars figures, like SH Figuarts or people like that, and Hot Toys, because people aren't going to want to buy them. They're not going to want to buy them because it's so there's going to be a knock-on effect.
Yeah. I mean, you see that with the figures from the Last Jedi, all those figures in the Entertainer for 2-3. You still got figures now in the Entertainer. I mean, the Entertainer is quite. You go to look at the Star Wars section, and they've got a lot of really nice vintage collection. They've got both Bespin guards. They got Val Sarfa figure.
Yeah,
they're all really good figures, but they're all £4, and they're just no one's buying them really. It's just us oldies that pop into Entertainer.
But we don't want it to get to a point where Hasbro's thinking, well, or even like shops, that are thinking, well, there's no point in buying these Star Wars figures because no one's buying them, and we're not buying them if we're not going to be happy with what we're watching on the telly. Because, like I say, the two work together. It's mad.
Yeah, but I think that Hasbro's really changed the way, like back in for most of the 90s and 2000s, you could go to Sainsbury's and you'd find Star Wars stuff there.
You could.
Whereas now it's like, especially with the big vehicles, it's all HasLabs now. Then Hasbro is not going to risk putting out a large vehicle into a supermarket to only have it discounted heavily. 1 or 2 years down the line, they're really realize that children are on their phones these days or playing video games. That's it. They're not into playing with toys like we did.
No. Moving on. How important are strong female characters within Star Wars?
Well, we've always had strong female characters with Princess Leia. I mean, she was always, compared to Han and Luke, she was the one that made the decisions, and she was the one that took command, and she was very strong, always from the get-go, from 1978, 77 onwards.
And that sort of like trend continued all the way through the like the
Jedi Mon Mothma.
Mon Mothma, didn't you as well? You had Padme Amidala for the prequel trilogy. I mean, crikey, she was a queen at the age of 14, not in real life, obviously in the film. So she was a queen. Then she was a senator in episode 2, right? Like Martin rightfully said, they sort of like pulled her back a little bit in episode 3 because she was pregnant throughout the movie. But then you've had like people like Ahsoka Tano, you've had Cara Dune, you've had Bo-Katan, and Ahsoka Tano and Bo-Katan, they were animated figures. They were that great as animated figures. They brought them into live action.
Yeah.
You've had people like Asajj Ventress, who was an animated, he was absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Aura Singh, again, in the Clone Wars, another female bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Fennec Shand, Cara Dune. Yeah. The list goes on.
Fennec Shand, she's a great character as well. Yeah. So
definitely.
Yeah,
Erso.
Yeah, so really you can't complain that there's no strong female characters.
No. And look, if people were that opposed against it, they would have said something a lot sooner. To be honest with you, wouldn't they? So anyhow, how important is it for Star Wars to be inclusive?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think it is.
No,
I think Star Wars is a galaxy far, far away. It shouldn't have to be inclusive. If you look at the Cantina in A New Hope, that's very diverse. It's got all bug-eyed aliens and stuff like that. I mean, that's what we really want, is strange-looking aliens and stuff like that, and you can use them as a metaphor for different species or different beings getting on and cooperating and being in a sort of mixed society. You don't need all this tick boxing, which is very Marxist in my mind.
No, that's fine. It's that's your opinion. That's not a problem at all. So, but I mean, if for characters like Lando Calrissian or Andor, you've got no problem with those characters.
And
if they fit in with the story,
fine, yeah. I mean, Lando's a great actor. He's a great character. He was probably the best thing in the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, Billy D. Williams, absolutely.
Yeah.
Last question. Overall, what makes Star Wars great?
Well, we'll go back to A New Hope, that it was innovative. It was something we've never seen before. It was a brilliant story, borrowing from Akira Kurosawa's Throne of Blood and the swashbuckling shows that Lucas grew up on in the 50s, Flash Gordon and all that sort of stuff, Buck Rogers, all those black and white movies that they used to watch. So Star Wars is all of that distilled and mixed in with a hero with 1,000 faces, and that's elements of THX 1138, future. It's just brilliant. It's just visually perfection. It's just X-Wings, TIE fighters, all those ships that we saw, that as a child you're gonna become obsessed with. The Millennium Falcon, that used universe, the characters of Han, Harrison Ford was just brilliant. That's the role, A New Hope, that really propelled him into superstardom and being probably the biggest actor in the late 80s, 90s. Harrison Ford. And then obviously Indiana Jones, Mark Hamill as Luke, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness, the droids. It's just perfection. There's nothing wrong with A New Hope.
No. I don't think there is either. I just think it's one of those films that
it's a watermark. It's something that it's an earthquake. It's an earthquake that really, knocked down everything that was before it, and since then it's everything else has subsequently has been affected by it. The way movies are made now, and have to be tied in with merchandising and all that sort of stuff.
Well, that's the good thing, and this is a point that we haven't made, and I just want to touch on it quickly. How ingenious was it of Lucas to turn around and say, right, you can have this, and this, but I want a cut of the merchant. I want the merchandise. That was incredible, because no one had ever done that up until that point.
I don't know how he foresaw that this merchandise would just click with children. I mean, maybe he was watching Star Trek at home in the 70s, you know, the reruns, and seeing that there was Star Trek figures, the Mego figures back then, the Planet of the Apes figures. Maybe he saw that $6 Million Man figure, that was Kenner as well, that you know, that if you have a hit show and you launch the action figure like the $6 Million Man at the same time, that becomes a big hit as well. And I mean, maybe in the, because he'd have been growing up in the 50s, that you would have had comics then at least, and a few toys, you know, space toys and stuff like that, obviously cowboy toys and soldiers and stuff like that. So he must have also as a child played a lot and had a deep love of toys as well and comics, and realized that the kids that saw Star Wars would want the toys and comics and all that sort of stuff as well. And so he fought to keep the licensing for those and made more money from that than the actual movies.
Yeah, that's incredible to think of, because like you've said, up until that point, that had never been done before, and how he had the vision and the foresight to see that was going to change, and that could, you know, this is what could happen if he did that. I mean, fair play to him. And none of the big toy companies were interested. None of them.
Mattel passed, Mego was the big one in those days. So and the thing is the waiting as well, because if you saw it in America in May, you had to wait till 78. You know, it was actually almost a year. At least we didn't have to
because
wait.
No one thought that Star Wars was going to be the success it was, so they were all caught with their pants down. And then when it sort of went boom, it was like, oh wow, we need to start getting stuff out and stuff like that, merchandise. But yeah, it's an absolutely incredible film, Star Wars, as is the original trilogies. I personally like the prequels. I do like the Clone Wars and a lot of other stuff that Disney had done, like Rogue One and Rebels and or Ahsoka. You know, so there has been a lot of good stuff out there. And again, I do not buy into this world where if you don't like something in Star Wars, you're not a true Star Wars fan. Absolute poppycock nonsense. Anyhow, I just want to say, BOE, thank you so much for taking part, mate. It's been awesome chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Always a pleasure. And for those of you who've stayed to the end to watch or listen, thank you very much. Take care, stay safe, and we shall see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.